We all know someone like him. A man who doesn't speak much, doesn't complain, doesn't fight back until it's too late to regret it. The kind who waits, watches, absorbs everything. The kind people ignore until it's them on the ground in this city. People like that are either ghosts or threats. And the truth is, no one can tell the difference anymore. So when a couple of cocky nobodies wearing fake badges decided to shove a homeless bum to the wall and slap a baton across his ribs like they were on some street-level power trip, they didn't think twice. But they should have. Because Jason Statham wasn't just watching, he was recording. It started in a rain-slick alley behind a closed pawn shop on Beckett Avenue. Broken neon buzzed overhead, puddles scattered in footprints. A kid, barely 16, had been cornered by two men with badge chains and mirrored sunglasses. One of them had a chest cam flashing red. The other held a zip tie between two fingers like he was about to win a prize. Jason stood 10 feet away, slouched against a rusted dumpster, hood up. Scars visible. They didn't even glance at him. The kid's voice cracked, too young to sound defiant, too old to cry. One of the fake cops jammed a hand into the kid's jacket and pulled out a small bag of powder, stage prop, pre-sealed, pre-printed. It hadn't been in the kid's coat 10 seconds ago. Jason saw it, recorded it, time-stamped it. Then the punch came. One of the fakes swung wide and hit the kid in the ribs. He doubled over, wheezing. Jason flinched slightly just in the hand. The camera in his coat switched modes. Facial recognition, active. That was when the third man walked in, shaved head, smug look. He had unit commander stenciled on his knockoff jacket, but the patch was ironed on crooked. He swaggered like someone used to being obeyed by people more scared than smart. He locked eyes with Jason. No words, just a glance. He laughed, the short, dismissive kind, then spat near Jason's boots and muttered something to his guys. Jason didn't blink, he just watched like always. They grabbed the kid, forced him to the wall. The one with the zip tie pulled out his phone, filming. Laughing, hashtagging, Jason's fingers slid across his ribs under the coat. No weapons, just a fob. He clicked it, one signal, 5 recipients, all silent, all waiting. 10 minutes later, a cruiser pulled up. Real uniform, real sirens, but the paperwork inside was fake. Jason knew. He'd seen this pattern 5 times in 3 weeks. Different boroughs, same rhythm. You arrest a kid with a staged charge, you run it through one dirty server. You lose the footage, and you collect the quota, simple, clean, until someone pulls the wrong thread. Jason stepped away from the dumpster. His boots hit the puddles without a splash. They turned. "Look at this guy," one of the fakes muttered. The commander smirked. "Hey, you lost your tent or something, Grandpa?" Jason didn't answer. He walked past them, slowly. The kid, now cuffed, stared at him with wide, shaking eyes. Jason met them for just half a second, and then he was gone around the corner. 3 hours later, in a one-room storage unit with peeling insulation and a hardwired modem hidden under scrap metal, Jason loaded the footage into 3 separate drives, each one encoded with a failsafe that traced any attempt to wipe it. He labeled them not with numbers, but with sounds. The first, whimper; the second, snap; the third, fall. He slipped one into a locker near a train station, one into the back pocket of a janitor who owed him nothing, and one he mailed to a name no one used anymore, but it used to belong to him. That night the footage leaked. But not on Twitter, not on the usual channels. It showed up in a parent group thread on a school forum. It showed up in a message board for retired officers. It showed up in an encrypted chat room only used by ex-contractors with revoked licenses, each version slightly different. Each one cut to reveal a different angle of the same crime, same kid, same alley, same 3 men, but from different distances, one from behind the cruiser, one from the dumpster reflection, and one from body height. Someone asked, "How did they even get this?" The reply came 2 hours later, anonymous, simple, because someone wanted it seen. The next day, the commander's face was blurred on the local news, but the jacket, the badge, the voice all matched. He denied everything, claimed the footage was AI generated, that the homeless man was probably a paid actor. The department promised an internal review, but the footage wouldn't go away. It kept reposting, copying, morphing, and someone had tagged every upload with the same phrase, "There's more." In the city's underground transport tunnel near Old Terminal 6, Jason walked through steam and silence. His boots scraped rusted concrete. The lights buzzed overhead like dying flies. On the wall, a symbol, 3 lines, Interlocked, it wasn't gang. It wasn't art. It was a signal. Jason reached into a crack in the bricks and pulled out a sealed folder. Inside, names, addresses, and a photo, not of the commander, not of the kid, of a woman, mid-30s. Burned scar on the jaw, same uniform as the fake cops, but she wasn't in the footage. Jason stared at it for a long time, then folded it in half and lit it on fire. Not because it wasn't useful, because he didn't want it shared, not yet. The fake cops didn't go into hiding, they doubled down. 2 nights later, another kid got arrested. But this one had a camera sewn into his shirt tag, and when they lifted him, he whispered a name, one the cop didn't expect. A name Jason had used once in Montenegro during a sting gone wrong. That night, the commander didn't go home. He drove around the city for 3 hours. Then finally pulled into a parking garage, alone. His hands shook when he locked the door. The dash light flickered, and the footage from the alley started playing on his phone again and again and again. He threw it out the window, the phone shattered, but the audio kept playing. From the speakers, from the mirror, from the car system itself. Meanwhile, Jason stood 2 blocks away in an alley lit by red LED strips. A stranger handed him a burner, said nothing. Jason took it, tapped a code. The voice on the other end said one thing, target confirmed. He thinks you're bluffing. Jason didn't reply. He didn't need to. He was already walking toward the next address. And across the city, one of the men from the alley was about to find a key taped to his apartment door with a note that read, "You should have looked closer." In cities like this, pain doesn't echo, it sinks into alleys, into basements, into the minds of people who think the world owes them fear. Jason Statham didn't need to introduce himself. He didn't need to warn anyone. That part of his life was over, the part where he gave people chances. What he needed now was access, and the man who had it, he lived 6 floors below a broken church with no roof. Jason moved like memory down the sidewalk, past storefronts that never reopened. He didn't draw eyes, just another washed-out face under a battered hoodie. At the corner, 2 kids shared a cigarette under a payphone that hadn't worked in years. One of them nodded toward the alley behind them. That was the only sign Jason needed. The door behind the church was metal, scratched, no lock, no handle. Jason tapped it twice, waited, tapped once. It opened. Inside, darkness, wires, burnt incense. The air was thick with old heat and server dust. A man in a frayed beanie sat at a desk built from scavenged wood and melted drive trays. He didn't look up, just slid over a data block. Jason took it, opened the casing, checked the ports. Then finally spoke, one word, low and flat. "Clean." The man nodded once. Jason dropped a slip of plastic on the desk and turned to leave on the plastic. A thumbprint, real, his, that was trust or bait, he didn't care which. Back in the city core, the fake cops were scrambling. The commander had issued a blacklisted order. Scrub the footage, discredit the source, intimidate the kid. But none of it stuck, because the footage wasn't centralized. It was forked, a dozen variations already fed to watchdog groups and automation scrapers. Even if they got the original down, 10 more would pop up overnight, and worse, someone had removed metadata from their own body cams, which meant whoever filmed it had been in the system. Not a random bystander, someone who knew the format, someone like Jason Statham. At 2:43 a.m., Jason stood in the stairwell of an unfinished condo project. Half the windows were boarded. The cameras didn't work. The walls were tagged with warnings, but the roof had clean line of sight. He opened a black case and pulled out a drone, small, matte black, silent rotors. He linked it to the block he'd picked up earlier, then launched it. One feed, one flight, and he watched. The drone hovered over Precinct 9 back parking lot. Several cruisers, one truck, no plates. Jason zoomed in. Inside the truck bed, equipment boxes. One marked with red tape, the kind only used in stings. Not city ops. He locked the tag, rerouted the footage, and overlaid it with archive logs. That truck had been reported stolen 6 months ago, then relisted as Special Operations Transport. They weren't just fake cops. They were real once. Burned, discarded, now acting like nothing ever happened. Jason didn't blink. He opened a folder from the drive. Inside, personal logs, names, shift overlaps, and at the bottom, a badge ID, burned, expired. It used to be his. He stared at it for a long moment. Then copied the file, dragged it into a folder labeled shame, and moved on. Across town, the kid who'd been arrested sat alone in a city holding room. The charges had vanished, no paperwork, no file, no fingerprint, but the bruises stayed. He looked at his reflection in the two-way mirror, then whispered the name again, the one Jason hadn't spoken aloud in over a decade, who told him didn't matter. The name was out now, and it had weight. That afternoon, Jason walked past a checkpoint with a blind scanner. The system pinged red, not for Jason, for the man in line behind him. A man with a forged badge. Jason kept walking. He didn't even glance back as the guards tackled the guy and dragged him into a scanner booth. Inside Jason's jacket, the scanner app logged it all. Another plant. Another fake. Let the system clean itself slowly. He wasn't here to save it. Just show people what it really was. Later, in an abandoned diner near Riverside, Jason met someone from his past. Not a friend, not quite an enemy. A woman with a limp and a pendant carved from old Comtech. She didn't sit, just dropped a folder on the table and walked away. Inside, 3 photos, all from different states, all showing the same face in different uniforms, same man, different names. Jason didn't need more proof, he needed positioning. By midnight, he was on the rooftop of a 20-story warehouse under renovation. Wind howled. Rain pushed sideways. His coat snapped like a flag. He placed a micro-recorder beneath a rooftop vent, not to spy, to transmit, to send out a single silent pulse. It carried no words, just a signature. One only 5 people in the country would recognize. One of them had trained him, another had buried him. And one was still watching. Down below, 2 of the fake cops were drinking in the back of a truck. They were laughing about the video, playing it on loop like a joke. They didn't notice the third man, the quiet one, wasn't laughing. He just stared at the screen. Then asked a question no one heard. Why didn't he fight back? No one had an answer. But they would. Inside a locker under Line 12 Metro Hub, a woman opened a package inside. A burner phone already powered on. It played one video, the alley Jason. The kid, the cops. She watched in silence. Then turned toward the surveillance mirror. She nodded once, and the lights flickered in the tunnel. Jason stood at the far end, motionless. The world was waking up, but not the way they expected. Because this wasn't just about one bad arrest. This was about exposure, reversal, punishment. And the next name on his list, it wasn't the commander. It was the one who recruited the commander 5 years ago under a different name. And Jason had just walked into the building across the street from his apartment, without a sound. Fear doesn't always shout. Sometimes it breathes shallow. Like the man sitting alone in the basement locker room of Precinct 9, staring at the same 14-second video on loop, the image of Jason Statham walking past them, hood up, face visible, no confrontation, no threat, just a look, then silence. That silence was louder now than anything the department had to say. 2 hours earlier, Jason had stepped into the maintenance sublevel of a condemned hospital, where his boots echoed down corridors that hadn't seen power since the city changed hands. He wasn't hiding. He was positioning. Dust clung to every broken screen and forgotten Roman IV bag. A single motion sensor pinged red as he passed. Behind a cracked mirror in the east stairwell, he found it, a lockbox welded into concrete. Inside, a vest, not tactical, civilian, but wired. Patches in the lining, thick with copper mesh and outdated sensors. This wasn't for defense. It was for proof. He pulled it on without hesitation, then shut the locker and walked back into the city like it owed him nothing, because it didn't. Back at the precinct, the commanders were falling apart. Internal affairs had shown up, but not from downtown. These were silent, plain clothes, no press, no ID. One asked for coffee. Another asked where the body cam drives were stored. Neither smiled. By the time the precinct's actual lieutenant arrived, it was already too late, because someone, anonymous, had submitted a chain of video files with timestamp pings that matched not just one false arrest but 6 different victims. Same audio, same voices. The fingerprints were in the voice samples, and someone had already matched one of them to a man supposedly killed in action 4 years ago. Jason Statham wasn't attacking. He was resurfacing slowly, and that was worse. Because now the fake cops didn't know how many others had already seen him. At 1:12 a.m., Jason entered a freight elevator beneath the old Southbridge silo. He didn't push a button, he just waited. The elevator started to descend, even though no lights were on. Below, 5 stories down, the floor opened into a tunnel lined with chalk marks and shattered bricks. There was only one source of light, a laptop, closed, still warm, next to it, a folded napkin, written in ink. He trained us too well. Jason didn't pick it up, he just stared. Then walked past it into the dark. Above ground, one of the fake cops, the tallest, left his apartment at 3:09 a.m. He didn't notice the envelope tucked under his windshield wiper. It wasn't addressed. Inside, a single flash drive. No label. He plugged it into his TV out of curiosity. It played security footage of himself, taken from a diner he didn't know had cameras. It showed him slipping a forged warrant to a waitress, then pocketing her tip money. He froze, then ran outside to check the car. But the envelope was gone. Jason was watching from across the street. From a rooftop, from a forgotten window behind rusted blinds, elsewhere in a parking structure near 8th and Rose, two fake cops sat in silence. One scrolled through social media. The other stared at a burner phone they didn't remember owning. It lit up on its own. No number, just a file. The alley scene again, but this version had audio clear enough to isolate breath patterns. One voice matched, theirs, and the second a faint whisper almost imperceptible just as Jason walked away in the clip. It said, "He's not here to warn you." Then the phone screen cracked. From the inside, at 4:45 a.m., Jason returned to the underground tunnel. This time he wasn't alone. The woman from the diner, the one with the pendant, was waiting by the broken terminal. She didn't speak. She just handed him a worn-out Metro badge. The kind issued to security agents from 3 administrations ago. Jason scanned it against a keypad built into the tunnel wall. It lit green. The door unlocked. Inside, a locker room, torn maps, printed names, photos of the same unit, all erased, all forgotten. One photo was different. Jason stared at it longer than the rest. It showed him, before the scar, before the fallout, before the silence. And in the background, smiling, was the man now pretending to be the unit commander. Jason took the photo, folded it, slipped it into his coat, then walked back out into the city. At sunrise, the commander stood in front of his shattered bathroom mirror, breathing hard. His phone had been pinging for hours. Unknown numbers, no messages, just location tags, one in his office, one in his cruiser, one in his bedroom. Each arrived with a timestamp and a single phrase, seen. Heard. Known. No demands, no threats, just awareness. That's what terrified him most. Jason wasn't out to stop them. He was out to make them visible to each other, to the world, to themselves. That morning, an alert pinged in the city's surveillance scrub log. A new facial ID was uploaded. It didn't match any known subject, but the alert said one thing: partial match with deceased asset, Class 7, redacted origin, shadow-level access suspected. The code was ancient, most people had never heard it used, but for the few who had, they knew what it meant. Someone wasn't just alive. Someone was operational. Jason Statham sat on a bench across from a preschool playground. Kids laughed behind him. Parents texted, called, checked watches. He just stared straight ahead. A bird landed beside him, flew off again. He waited, and at exactly 9:17 a.m., a paper cup was placed beside him by a hand wearing surgical tape. No words, just steam rising from the cup and a folded receipt taped to the bottom. He waited until the hand was gone, then peeled the tape. On the back of the receipt, coordinates and one word scratched in block letters: train. Jason didn't move right away. He just let the sunlight warm his coat, then stood, because someone had just invited him to where this all began, and whoever did was about to wish they hadn't. Beneath a city pretending everything's fine, the truth moves like water, slow, silent, unstoppable. And Jason Statham was already halfway under. The coordinates written under the paper cup led to a place long abandoned by most. An old train yard outside District 4, surrounded by scrap, flooded tunnels, and fences topped with coils of rusted wire. It wasn't the kind of place people came back from, but Jason had been here before, not as a visitor, as a witness, to a betrayal that was never documented, and a lie that was still being lived. He walked between the shattered rails, boots sinking slightly into moss-covered gravel. To his left, a broken passenger car listed sideways, its door torn off like it had been peeled open. To his right, a derailed cargo container sat under a collapsed bridge, tagged with warnings in 3 languages. He stopped at the clearing. Kneeling in the weeds, partially covered in dirt, was a steel hatch, no handle, just a thumbprint panel still faintly powered. Jason knelt, pressed the scarred pad of his right thumb against it. The lock clicked. not because it recognized him, because someone wanted him to be let in. Inside, the air was stale and hot. No light except for the faint red glow of emergency backups along the floor. He moved down the tunnel with precision, not rushed, not slow, like he already knew where it ended. Around the final bend he found it, an old command chair, folded maps, empty coffee cups from a brand that stopped existing 5 years ago, and a screen, black, until he stepped closer. Then it lit up, his face years younger. No beard, no scars, captured mid-sentence in a debrief from an operation that was supposed to be sealed. Someone had the tapes. Someone had access, and someone had been watching. Across the city. The commander's phone buzzed again. But this time it wasn't anonymous. It was labeled internal memo, and it had one attachment, a still image of him in the alley, backed by Jason's shadow. His mouth hung open slightly, the baton mid-swing, timestamp. The exact second he made the decision to hit a restrained teenager. There was no caption, just that moment, frozen, perfect, unjustifiable. Jason leaned forward at the console and keyed open the side tray. Inside, a drive. Label, doubt. He slipped it into his pocket and turned to leave. But just before he exited, a static burst crackled from an old speaker near the vent. He paused, then it came again, clearer this time. A voice he hadn't heard in 7 years. It said 2 words, one name, then silence. Jason's jaw clenched, not in fear and recognition. He walked out without a sound. Elsewhere, the woman from the diner moved through a private server room with no lights. She connected 3 lines, ran a verification pulse, then activated a soft boot. Screens blinked. The footage Jason had gathered from the alley, the body cams, the drone, began sinking into one continuous reel. But not for the press, for one target, someone higher, someone clean but blind. The goal wasn't revenge, it was removal. That night, every unit in Precinct 9 received an anonymous message on their precinct tablets. If you're real, you're in danger. If you're not, you're next. One rookie dropped his badge. The rest ignored it, until the lights in the evidence room began flickering. The servers reset, and one name reappeared in their flagged list of erased agents, not with a profile picture, with a red triangle, and 2 words under it, active field. Jason Statham moved through the city unnoticed, now in plain clothes, no coat, no visible gear. He boarded a train headed west 3 stops. Then exited, crossed an empty courtyard, and slipped into the rear entrance of an auto shop closed since the riots. Inside, he opened a floor panel and pulled out a crate. Inside, a change of clothes, a burner laptop, a single Polaroid slightly burned, and a small black key with no teeth. That key didn't open doors. It triggered a system, one that hadn't run in a decade. But Jason had hardwired it into every broadcast tower the city never finished upgrading. He walked toward one of them now, a fenced dome behind a junkyard, partially camouflaged by graffiti and time. It took him 4 minutes to reach the console, 2 to override the local grid, and 1 to upload the first phase. The message wasn't a video, it wasn't a face, it was text, silent and bright. He never raised his hands. You raised yours, the world will watch now. Then a countdown, 00:58:42 in a hotel on the opposite side of the city. A woman woke up to her television already on. The message was there. She hadn't touched the remote. Down the hall, another man's phone showed it too. Across the city, public displays started blinking. Taxis, lobbies, atoms. Screens in gyms and food courts, everyone repeating the same sentence. He never raised his hands. The city's mayor called a digital emergency halt. But the stream wasn't traceable, because the stream wasn't broadcasted. It was injected into the very spine of the grid. Someone who had once built it now owned it, and that someone was already riding an unmarked maintenance truck through the east tunnels, with a new file tucked into his chest pocket labeled Witness 01. Jason Statham didn't move fast. He didn't speak. He didn't send threats. He just showed up. And now the people who mocked him in the alley couldn't leave theirs without checking corners, elevators, bathroom stalls. Because the man they called homeless wasn't hiding. He was returning, piece by piece, scene by scene. And just before sunrise, one of the men who watched him walk away that night opened his fridge. Inside, beside the orange juice, was a VHS tape. No label, just a sticker on the case. Replay that moment. The one where you laughed. He didn't press play, not yet. Because from behind him, the front door creaked open, no footsteps, No sound, just air pressure shifting and a shadow not running, not attacking, just waiting,